Islam Makhachev is your new UFC lightweight champion. It did not hurt me to say that as much as you may think it did. Now, he gets it done with a second round submission over Charles Dubronx Oliveira. As you all know, we try to remain as unbiased as we can on this show, but some things are, dare I say, inevitable. And I become so absorbed into the just star power of Charles Oliveira. I am such a big fan of his. I could not contain my bias for the fight breakdown. Just couldn't do it. Couldn't do it. And I had just had to lean into it, if anything. You don't want to do what like what Daniel Cormier does on commentary. I get it. You have to do that because you're a commentator. You have to try to line even though you do have a clear bias. I tried to do that on here. I feel like you guys would have all seen through it. So I just had to lean into it, go full in, Charles Oliveira, and I was all in. I put money on the line, and I lost it. I lost that money. Yep. But that's okay because we do have a new lightweight champion. And Dominic, I said on this show, going in on the preview, in order for Islam Makhachev to get this victory, he needed to show us something that he had not up to this point. Are we in agreement that we saw that very thing on Saturday afternoon?
I would say so. It was really domination for 8 minutes and 16 seconds by Islam. He looked calm and competent on the feet, enough to cause problems for Charles, because I would have thought going in Charles had the advantage there. We've seen his striking improve over the last few fights. He's putting people away on the feet in his last few fights. But Islam was the one doing the damage. He was the one leading the dance. And he even landed a big shot that knocked down Charles and led to that inevitable submission that came in the halfway point of the second round. So it was a very, very strong showing for Islam, man. I mean, what more could you even ask from him? I guess the only thing that didn't happen that I still wish would have, but again, it's like he's so good. What's it even really matter at this point? He didn't really have to face a storm. It was all him, man. So a credit to him for being able to do that to the former champion, to the number one man in this division, or the former number one man in this division now. So Islam is sitting atop the throne. He's accomplished Father's plan. He is the protege of Khabib Nurmagomedov. He is the lightweight champion, man. And we can't take that away from him. If we're going to lose money, we want it to be to a guy like that, a guy that you can confidently say is the new best lightweight in the world. It was quite the performance. It really was.
Yeah, I completely think we saw something we had not seen up to that point. It's clear his striking is much better than we anticipated. His striking, while he does not lean on it, he doesn't use it often, at least as a key to his offense. Here, when he did, he got the better of the exchanges. And really what it came down to, Dom, the biggest difference between these two guys, I'm not even going to get into like the stylistic differences, but really the simple big difference in this fight was Islam is defensively extraordinary.
Yeah.
Charles puts himself in danger. That's what he's done. That's what he got this reputation of being a guy who gets his ass kicked and then comes back, which I don't think is quite the picture that is reality. But I see the point. You know, he gets beat up, he comes back. But that's because he's willing to put himself into those dangerous, risky positions in order higher the risk, higher the reward. You know, and that's how he's really carved out this legacy for himself. But Islam was just so defensively sound here. I mean, Charles really just couldn't get anything going. And then once he started to try to implement that pressure, Islam very opportunistic with his level changes. Once they were in the clinch, very good about getting the trips, getting the fight to the ground and holding position. I mean, there's really nothing you can say about this performance that was anything other than exceptional.
Yeah.
And I see what you're saying. We say that a lot about different fighters, how we want to see them face the storm a little bit, have to, you know, like what Charles has done. Like you want to see from someone like Islam who's been mostly dominant. Yes, he does have a knockout loss from back in the day, but in terms of this run he's been on since then, it's now 11 straight wins for him. you want to see him get tested, get actually like drop around or some, see how he responds, get rocked, something. But Dominic, I don't even need to see that at this point to buy into him,
Right.
because once you reach the pinnacle of the sport, once you reach a champion, I'm just going to assume that that's just not going to happen, at least for a while.
Yep.
We're
Yep.
just not going to see him in a compromised spot. He just might be that much better than everybody that he's going to fight. We'll see. Time will tell. He does have a very big fight, it looks like, in his first title defense. But in terms of what we saw here, A plus across the board. I mean, there's really just nothing I can say that is anything other than this was an exceptional performance. He showed some layers that I had not anticipated or has seen, and it was a huge jump for him. He was obviously ready for the moment. He's got a great team behind him, a great corner. These people are taking over the sport over in Dagestan, and Islam Makhachev might be here to stay.
Yeah, yeah. I mean that's the phrase right there. Here to stay. We have no reason not to believe that. And now he's the champion, man. And like you already said, that first title defense is going to be mighty interesting. And I just want to say before we transition that that run from Charles was quite historic. It was quite special to see what he did in such a really short amount of time in terms of like that whole championship era, being in these fight of the nights, being in these main events, really just making the most of the opportunity. That's what you want to see these fighters do. He did that. He falls short here, but he's still in the prime of his career. You never know. We may just see a rematch down the line. But for right now, all the glory is to Islam. There's no excuses. In the future, Noah, I mean, you can't really have a bigger first title defense than what Mr. Islam Makhachev's about to have.
Yeah, it seems all but certain we will be super fight next between Islam Makhachev and the featherweight champion and number one pound for pound fighter in the world, Alexander Volkanovski, as the main event over in Australia come the first quarter of 2023. Now, Dominic, this is kind of our chance to really address this. We didn't do so on Thursday just because we kind of wanted to see who was actually going to be the champion going into that. And, Charles had had some big plans for himself, and if that were going to be the scenario. But now that we know Islam's the champion, Volk looks like he's going to get that title. My question for you is, do you think that this is the right fight to make? Now, we had other fights here in the lightweight division. I guess, is this the fight that you think should be made? And if not, who's really getting skipped over the most here?
At this point, there is no other man getting skipped over more than Mr. Benil Dariush himself, who was on this card, who extended his own win streak to, I believe, 8 now. So while it is unfortunate, while I hate saying it, Alexander Volkanovski is the number one fighter in the world, number one pound for pound fighter in the world. He's the champion at 145. He's the man that showed up as the backup, made the weight when he did not have to do it. He put himself in that spot for a reason. Now he's going to get rewarded for those sacrifices that he did. Getting to host that title fight in his homeland of Australia is massive, by the way, and massive for Islam to go over there to that, into that atmosphere. So I love everything about it. I think it's a phenomenal super fight with fantastic storylines, and I'm here for it, man. I really am. The rest of this division have kind of already had their shot, right? I mean, you got Dustin, you got Chandler, you got Gaethje. All three of those guys fell by the wayside of Charles Oliveira, who's now going to flip-flop to that number one. Well, really, he's going to stay at number one because Islam goes to the champ. But you get my point. There's no one else that got really skipped over except Benil, but it was already, I believe, a long shot for him to get a title fight, even with the win over Matoski Amrat, regardless of if Alex was in the picture or not, which I hate to say again, but I believe that's the case. So, yeah, I'm fine with this, man. And Benil, and we're going to talk about him, of course, later, but I do truly stand strong that one more and he's in. And if not, even if he waits, like the win streak is unmatched right now. So I'm not even going to hate it if he waits, but I think he'll probably fight one more time.
I do feel like, I don't know, but I feel like if you go back and look at what we said after Benil's last fight, I'm pretty sure we also said one more and he would get a title fight. So
It's
I
likely.
feel like we just keep. I feel like the next time he comes in here, we're gonna be like, well, one more and he gets a title fight. It's like, when are we finally just gonna give the guy his shot? So Alexander Volkanovski, number one pound for pound fighter. The man beat Max Holloway 3 times. He destroyed the Korean Zombie. The dude has looked impeccable. He destroyed Brian Ortega. He's putting on good fights. He's putting on even better performances in those fights. I'm not one of those people that thinks that a champion moving up or down has to have a fight in that division before they get a title fight. If you proved you're the best fighter of your weight class, and a guy like Volkanovski doesn't have a clear number one contender, I'm
Hmm.
fine with him moving up and going straight for the title. I mean, it's a reality of the sport. Like, sure, it'd be nice if we had it set up to where it made sense for Volk to go up and fight like Charles, and then if he wins, then he fights Islam. But the money talks and belts matter in this sport, and you have two champions wanting to fight one another. It makes a lot of sense, and I do think it's a very interesting style fight.
Mm.
Volk may end up being a pretty decent underdog here. Like, odds had a bigger underdog than Charles was going into this fight, which I think is very interesting. I'm curious how you feel about that. Just immediate thoughts of Volkanovski being over a 2-1 underdog.
Yeah. Oh man, over a 2-1. I guess I wouldn't be
I think
terribly
it makes sense,
surprised.
doesn't it?
I think it
Yeah,
makes
I think it
sense.
makes sense, right?
I don't know if they will get that steep, or if anything, maybe they open and then it shall close closer, kind of like how the one with Charles did. But if it stayed that way all the way through, I would be very surprised. How about that? Because this is, at the end of the day,
Really?
the number one pound for pound fighter in the world. I know he's going up a weight class. I know Islam looked massive compared to him when they were standing face to face in the octagon. But the talent matters. The title defenses matter. The fight styles matter. And Alex is as well rounded as they come. But I do think, regardless, he will close as an underdog. Still, it's just a matter of like how big or small that discussion can vary between people. But yeah, he's going to be an underdog, which is insane because the man hasn't been an underdog in quite some time, and he damn sure hasn't looked like an underdog.
I can't think of another scenario where a number one pound for pound fighter in the world will be an underdog, but this
Right,
one. And
right.
I can't deny, after what I saw Saturday, I think it makes a lot of sense that he is the underdog of this fight. And I think being that much of an underdog probably makes sense too. Like, to me, it's as great as Volkanovski is, we cannot deny the fact that he's not some huge featherweight that's going to be moving up here. I mean,
Hmm.
after what we saw with, like, this is not the same thing, but Lasagna went up to light heavyweight. Things are just different when you move up weight classes. And yes, I know that was Adesanya going up 20 pounds, but when you scale it down and you have these guys that are smaller framed, 10 pounds makes a lot of difference going from 145 to 155. Islam's a big 155er, man. He's got good size to him, good length to him. Volkanovski's he's so good though. I don't know if it'll matter, but and then you have the wrestling on top of it. Like, it's a very tough fight for Volkanovski. And I mean, maybe this is a given due to the fact that Charles just lost, but dare I say, I think Islam's just a much tougher fight for Volk than Charles would be. Even though if Charles would have won this fight against Islam, that obviously is not what happened, but probably both of them should be a favorite over him in all reality. It's just, I don't know. I think it's an awesome fight, though. It's a great main event for that card. I I probably right now gut tells me I'm not putting any money on it. I just don't know where to even lean there. Like, it's so intriguing.
Yeah, yeah. There's literally that's the most intriguing fight to me right now. Out of all these other great fights that are happening the rest of the year, that one that isn't even officially booked, but you just know is going to happen. It's just so sick. It's a special fight because we're having potentially the future of this division, a future all-time great going up in his very first title defense and already being against the number one pound for pound fighter in the world, another champion. I mean, you just don't see scenarios like this happen. And that's what makes it so special. And not to mention just the talent that both guys have. It's going to be sick. It's going to be a
Mm.
spectacle, too. At least I sure hope so.